Tip number 1. Civilians are now one of the most broken pops in the entire game. They can produce just about every single resource in just one job type. The first thing you'll want to do is you want to build an autocathon monument in order to allow your pops to produce additional unity from civilians. Then you will want to make sure that you're deprioritizing most of the jobs on your planet in order to prioritize civilians. Then make sure you go to your species rights and change your rights to utopian abundance. In order to do this, your government will need to be some level of egalitarian. And then, in addition, your species can also have the seasonal dormancy trait, which reduces the upkeep of your pops by 75%. You can then combine this with state academies in order to get additional tech from civilians. And then the mercantile tradition tree, if we go and take a look at this, we have trickle up economics, which makes our civilians produce trade, amenities, and adaptive economic policies, which will then allow us to turn our trade into additional amounts of consumer goods. And this will sustain our consumer goods economy while producing a huge amount of tech and unity that will make our early game extremely easy to manage. I highly would recommend this for most of your playthroughs, as it's much easier to make consumer goods than it is to make tech. Quick note, you will also need the Civilian Education Civic in order to build state academies that allow your pops to produce extra tech from civilians, so yeah, just thought I'd mention that. Tip number 2. The Lubrication Tank Civics was changed in Stellaris 4.0 and is now an extremely powerful option. It allows you to make an enormous amount of pop assembly in exchange for amenities usage, which is not very important to deal with, and thus you can get some really funny things like this, where my world has 174 monthly pop assembly. In order to do this, simply make sure you have a hyperlubrication basin on your planet, at least one industrial support zone, and then max out the number of city districts as this scales your pop growth, and you can get some really ridiculous things like this, where you're just printing pops out of thin air at a rate which is barely believable. Take advantage of this while it lasts. Tip number 3. Have you ever wondered how you can get the most out of your modularity traits? There's a lot of great assembly traits, but also a lot of great efficiency traits that we want to add to our pops. It's actually possible to get the best of both worlds. Start off by removing most of the traits from your pops and creating a brand new template that uses all assembly on one side. So we're going to put monoform, let's see if we can find the other ones quickly, biometric assembly, and mass produced. Now all we need to do is fill in the remaining slots with adaptive frames. Make sure you do this, and then proceed to use the rest of your trait picks. It doesn't really matter what you do, just don't put luxurious or anything that affects assembly speed. And let's just use up every single trait pick, and this will give this pop a very good assembly score. So let's, to make this clear, name this the assembly species, and go ahead and save that. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure we create another template. So let's modify this to simplify things. And this species, instead of giving all the assembly traits, we're going to give all the efficiency traits. Efficient processors, shielded components, dark matter engines, exotic gas consumption, matrix trading, whatever we need. And for negative traits, we're going to select things that affect assembly as well. And let's just remove a couple of these since we obviously don't need high maintenance or decadent. And we can pick some extra positive traits even. Maybe we want moat power tools or rare crystal exterior. It's less important to use all trait picks, and we'll go ahead and add this as a template. Now what we're going to want to do is go to your assembly template and set the species rights as integrate into default subspecies, and then use your main species with all the positive traits, and then set this as the default. And I did forget to rename this, so let's modify this template and call this the main species to make this less confusing. Let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to save this species as the default species of our empire. Now our previous pop assembly is going to be just as high, except we're going to be getting all the advantages of our main species, and if we speed up time, we're going to see that we have some of these assembly pops integrating into the main species, and we can even set our original species to integrate into the default subspecies, and then we get the advantage of having assembling these extremely quickly assembling pops and the most efficient pops possible. Now, to check what pop you're actually assembling, you will have to scroll through here, and you'll be able to see on these growth amounts that we're probably assembling the assembly pop. By hovering over this little indicator, you can see that too. And despite assembling those, then our species are increasing into the main species, which is really, really awesome. And you can see that our tech production even went up significantly, and alloys, just from doing that. So, tip number 4. The new Bio-Ascension governments are now some of the strongest government types in the entire game and can single-handedly carry Bio-Ascension to being extremely good. There are 2 good ones to consider. The first one is the Eugenic Hierarchy, which is the oligarchic version of a purity government. And what this does is it gives plus 2.5% job efficiency per species genetic perfection. And species genetic perfection, you can think of this as the absolute value of the total number of trait points you spend on your species. So you basically want to put as many positive and negative traits on your species as possible to maximize this value. This is a quick example of a template I've used, and it is very, very efficient. And yes, I realize now I don't have enough consumer goods, so let's fix that for anybody who might be worried about that. The other thing you might want to pay attention to when doing a Bio-Ascension is you don't get the same traditions depending on what situation approaches you take. And I would highly recommend, as your first situation, always take mutation. For your second one, always take cloning. And then for your third one, take purity, and then do a purity ascension. It's a bit of a process to memorize, but once you have it down, you get the maximum benefits, getting 200% habitability from the mutation selection, getting decent pop assembly from, well, that's actually very, very good pop assembly from cloning, and getting the maximum efficiency possible as well, just from having a ton of genomic researchers boosting pop efficiency to extreme levels with purity. So yeah, I would highly recommend those 3 as your selection. Tip number 5, be very careful with your Ascension slots. Make sure you don't take anything you don't intend to use in the long run, as you might come to regret it later on. For example, it might be very tempting to take things like Hydrocentric if you're aquatic, or One Vision for the extra early game unity, or Executive Vigor for the council speed and an edict cap. But I would generally say you should definitely avoid these, as there will be some other Ascension perks you will definitely want for the late game. You will want to maintain at least one for an Ecology later. You will probably want Galactic Wonders, and on top of that, a lot of people will also want to eventually have things like Colossus Project to get, super large Colossus projects and that kind of thing. So yeah, be very careful with your Ascension picks, and don't waste too many on early game picks anymore. Even Archeo Engineers is now extremely good, as minor artifacts are finally renewable. By building a arcology, and not an arcology, an Archeo study building, you can now actually even produce a renewable source of minor artifacts per biologist worker, which is extremely useful. So there are a ton of useful Ascension perks, and don't waste too many on early game ones. Just use the bare minimum amount that you need to get to your Ascension before you start to pick late game picks. Tip number 6. Speaking of Ascension perks, Enigmatic Engineering or Cosmogenesis are now extremely powerful. Fallen Empire buildings are now extremely accessible with the amount of early game tech that most builds can produce. For example, I'm playing Knights of the Toxic God here with Bio-Ascension, which is not recommended. I would recommend Synthetic for Knights. However, I'm still producing a absolutely massive amount of technology, and most builds will be able to produce maybe not this much, but also a very, very high amount of tech, maybe 10k by year 70, which means Fallen Empire buildings are extremely strong and can give you some awesome bonuses. For example, I have 1.3 thousand genetic genomic researchers on my home planet, resulting in 50 pop growth as a purity empire, not even a cloning empire, which is really, really fun. Um, so, yeah, our entire the Knight's world is covered with Aegis complexes to boost the efficiency of that. Um, and yeah, we're taking advantage of Fallen Empire buildings wherever we can, as they're super strong and super fun and more accessible than ever. So I would definitely recommend leaving one perk for Enigmatic Engineering and or Cosmogenesis. Both will help you unlock the Fallen Empire buildings. When building your tech planets, make sure to heavily specialize your planets as much as possible. For example, make sure you build the Life Systems Complex, Advanced Engineering Complex, and Fundamental Research Nexus respectively for each tech to boost the output of those jobs by 2 each per 100 pops, and the planetary computer also boosts every single type of researcher pop by 2 each per 100 pops, which is very, very powerful. Also, make sure to build the data-driven theorem facility, which gives an additional 15% research for the maximum efficiency, and the research supply depot to minimize the upkeep. Also, you can then build as many city districts as possible, or arcology districts if you have arcologies, to maximize the amount of jobs you get. As you can see, we're getting a really, really crazy amount of jobs, depending on what kind of research specialization you have. This is a society tech planet. And then also fill up any extra arcology spaces as much as you can. As you can see, we're missing one still that I forgot to build. So yeah, you can now really mini-max your tech planets. This planet alone is making like 5,000 tech, which is really, really awesome. And it's not even done being mini-maxed. Tip number 8. When picking a planet to become your main energy planets, it is no longer so important to consider the number of base energy districts each planet has, as this can be upgraded massively through tech. Let's go ahead and take a look at this planet. It currently has 5 energy districts, which is not enough to be a main energy planet. However, the new energy building, the Conductive Works Complex, can increase the maximum number of districts by 2, and this can be upgraded many, many times. By the time we've upgraded this to the max, we should have an extra like 6 energy districts or something like that. Let me just double check that. Alright, good thing I double checked, because with a fully upgraded planetary nexus, we now have a maximum of 13 energy districts, so you can artificially get a +8 to any basic districts and an extra 200 jobs on top of that, simply through buildings. Which means, yeah, don't worry too much about the natural amount of districts on each planet. The size of the planet is now slightly more important to fit all these districts you can get through buildings. So, yeah. Tip number 9. For early war builds and for just general aggressive play in the early game, bioships are now significantly better than alloy ships. To use a bioship, simply at the beginning of your game, select one of the 2 biological ship sets instead of any of the mechanical ones. And what you'll get from this is your ships will now cost food instead of alloys. In addition to that, you can even go with fauna ships by using something like Beastmasters to even more depend entirely on food. So yeah, there's now 3 classes of ships, which is pretty confusing. Fauna ships, bioships, and alloy ships. And alloy ships are now the worst of the 3, unfortunately. Bioships require some alloys and some food. Alloy ships require only alloys, and fauna ships require only food, making them extremely powerful for the early and mid game, and I would highly recommend it in combination with something like a dictatorial purity government in order to get society tech. And you can get some really, really broken early game power with just food as well. So, yeah, it simplifies your economy a lot. Tip number 10. Knights of the Toxic God is now one of the best builds in the entire game. I didn't know if I wanted to make this its own tip, but I've decided to, as it's just so broken. Essentially, Knights of the Toxic God gets access to a special job called a Knight. And Knights produce an insane amount of tech, and this used to be balanced by the fact that you couldn't produce very many Knight jobs, So having a few hyper efficient pops wasn't a big problem. Now, strongholds, fortresses, and anything that gives access to jobs that were usually considered soldiers and would give naval cap now give knights, which give naval cap in addition to massive amounts of tech and unity. Um, and yeah, basically, you want to start off in your knight's world and you want to spam out as many strongholds and fortresses on your habitat, which you get at the beginning of the game, by the way. Um, and you can also upgrade the other districts to add, research support buildings and that kind of thing. And you end up with just a ridiculous amount of tech from a single source and some really, really efficient pops. I would recommend playing this with synthetics, but I was just testing out to see if genetics works too, and it definitely does. And now, last but not least, a bonus tip, because um, this is something that is going to be very disruptive for casual multiplayer if people start taking advantage of it, and that is Eternal Vigilance. Eternal Vigilance is extremely broken because what it does is it produces star bases for free. All you have to do is go to the full spending setting, and now every star base will automatically build defense platforms, and you can even design your own, or you can just let them build the default designs. And if we go in fastest, we'll gradually see all our star bases increase over time. So this is 31.7k, and I believe every year it should build a new defense platform or something like that, up to half the maximum defense platform capacity of the star base. Right, so yeah, I just went up. I don't think I caught it, but if you were paying attention, did, and they'll continuously go up over time. Barnard's Star Station was 5.1k at the beginning of this, now it's 11, and going back to Nyaz, as you can see, we're gradually building up here too. So, yeah, really, really powerful, especially in the early game. I know this is a year 74 save that I use as an example, probably not the best example, but you can defend yourself for free, allowing yourself to scale with weak early game builds like Knights of the Toxic God. And all you have to do is complete the Unyielding Tradition tree in order to do so, which also has some additional synergy with Knights and something like Reanimators, for example. As you get extra unity from your armies, we're getting 500 unity from armies right now, which is a nice extra added bonus. Anyways, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe for more, as it encourages me to try to make more videos, and I really do enjoy it. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.